Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have a little bit of a special review. As mentioned in the channel message video yesterday, this is my 10th anniversary review. And when I started the channel I never thought that it would get to this point, but yeah, it's a hell of a milestone, I have to say. So as I always do with these milestone reviews, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you that have supported the channel over the years, whatever you've done, and you know, however big, however small, it's hugely appreciated. This really for me is a hobby that just got out of hand, and I love making these videos, and I do have no intention of stopping, so there will be many more things for you guys to enjoy over the coming years. But yeah, for this review today, as promised in the channel message video yesterday, I thought we would do a beer that will be a little bit special, and this is an anniversary for me and also for the brewery that is going to be involved in this one. So for this review we are going to stick to my home county of Clackmannanshire here in Scotland, and we're returning to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're known for their kind of golden session ales and for their historic recipes, and those of you who know the Scottish beer scene well will probably know who I'm talking about at this point. But yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a mile or two down the road to Alloa, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Williams Brothers Brewing Company. But this is not any beer from them, this is one of their 30th anniversary beers. So this one is the Fraoch Barrel Aged Edition for 2022, but I have also seen it called on Untappd, what was it, the Fraoch 30th Anniversary 2022 Expression, so I'm not sure exactly what I will entitle this video, but in any case it's the 30th Anniversary Edition of Fraoch. It's a barrel aged version coming in at 11% ABV, and it's been aged in Speyside whiskey casks, so this should be very special. Kind of cool to celebrate my 10th anniversary here on YouTube with one of my local breweries' 30th anniversary beers, and also one of the oldest beer styles in the world as well. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's all about. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Williams Brothers Brewing Company before, and there will definitely be more at some point in the fairly near future. We do have the other 30th anniversary ale to have a little look at, so look forward to that one. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things, and that will be getting added to quite regularly over the next little while. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit once again about Williams Brothers Brewing Company. So, as I mentioned to you already, Williams Brothers Brewing Company are currently based in Alloa in Clackmannanshire in central Scotland, almost halfway between Edinburgh and Glasgow, but Williams Brothers as a company finds its roots in the family-owned Glenbrew home brewing shop through in Glasgow. So the first beer that these guys made was inspired by a 17th century Gaelic recipe for Fraoch Heather Ale, which does of course take its name from the Celtic mythological hero of, you know, the synonymous Celtic mythological hero, I guess I should say. But back in 1988, a woman of Gaelic descent came into the brew shop with a translation of this ancient recipe, and she basically wanted to create a batch of this beer to share with her family, and she agreed that she would share the recipe with Bruce Williams in exchange for helping brew a batch. And from what I understand, there is basically an agreement between this woman and the Williams brothers that she gets as much of this beer as she wants these days. But the small batch of only 5 barrels was brewed at Tainault railway station near Oban, and the following year demand for this beer had increased massively simply through word of mouth. It went down very well. But in 1989, Scott Williams joined his brother Bruce, and they began to develop some other historic recipes, such as the Groatsit Gooseberry Wheat Ale, the Kelpie Seaweed Ale, the Abelum, which is an elderberry black ale, and also the Alloa, which is the Scots Pine Ale. So the official start date of Williams Brothers is listed as 1992, and these 4 recipes were produced originally at the Macleay Brewery in Alloa, and then at the Craigmill Brewery in Strathaven to the south of Glasgow, which was actually built by the Williams Brothers, and they were there between 1998 and 2004. But in 2004, they relocated to their current base at the 4th Brewery in Kellybank in Alloa, and this was when they adopted the name kind of officially Williams Brothers Brewing Company, because the company's official legal name, from what I understand, is Heather Ales Limited. But oddly, these guys are the last brewery in the old brewing capital of Scotland, and over the years they've basically built up the capacity of this brewery to be 100,000 hectolitres, and they have plans to build a new brewery near their current site which will have a capacity of 200,000 hectolitres, although I'm not sure how that's going at the moment, because obviously the COVID pandemic put paid to a lot of plans. But these days the brewery is run by Chris Williams, who's Bruce's son, and Scott is still involved in the company as well. But like I said to you, these guys are known for their historic recipes. In recent times, they've been releasing quite a few tallboy cans, which have been quite interesting. But if people were to ask me about this brewery, like I said, I would always say that they're best known for the kind of sessionable golden ales, if you like. For me, my favourite one is probably Caesar Augustus. March of the Penguins is a lovely stout as well, and Joker IPA is a very popular one. But always for me, the go-to would be Caesar Augustus. That probably is my favourite one, and Pavlov's Dog was always a very nice one as well. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Williams Brothers Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn a bit more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the bottle on this one before we open it up. The label is kind of crumpling a little bit because it's getting a wee bit sweaty since I've taken it out of the fridge. The bottle, incidentally, is a 750ml one, and you can see, quite unusually for Williams Brothers, this one has that lovely kind of wax top to it, which I might struggle to open, we'll just need to see. But yeah, this one was a little bit more expensive. I think I paid like £18 or £19 for this bottle, but when I saw that they were releasing some 30th anniversary beers, I had to have them, so I got both of them. Actually, I bought these ones from Valhalla's Goat through in Glasgow, which actually belongs to Williams Brothers Brewery, and of course they've got the bar in Deep, which is below it. So I do recommend that you go and check out these venues should you get the chance. But yeah, as I say, beautifully presented. This one there, you can see the Williams Brothers Brewery symbol on the side of the bottle there. But yeah, as we said earlier, this one comes in at 11% ABV, and it is a Fraoch Scottish Heather Ale. So it says on the side here, barrel-aged Fraoch Heather Ale brewed to an imperial strength in 2011, specifically to be wood-aged in Scottish whisky casks from a range of Speyside's finest distilleries. Each year, a limited number of barrels are specifically selected and blended to create a unique expression. Fraoch's classic character of honey, malt, spice and floral aromas is enriched by oat, dried fruits and sherry, while maturing in single malt Speyside casks. So yeah, I have to say I'm very, very curious to see how this one turns out. For me, Speyside whisky tends to be quite sweet and very smooth actually. I mean, Aberlour was always a little bit of a go-to for me, but Speyside whisky is very, very nice, and that's generalising of course, because different Speyside distilleries of course will taste very, very different, but yeah, generally speaking for me, Speyside whisky is quite nice and quite smooth. But yeah, we've putting a little line around the wax top there, but let's pop this one open then and see how we get on. Ooh, that came off quite nicely actually, nice and clean. So, as you can see, a little touch of smoke on the opening there, and I'll tell you something, as soon as you open this up, you can absolutely smell the booze out of this one. But yeah, let's have a wee look at this. That looks absolutely lovely. That's a beautiful, beautiful looking beer, I have to say. I tell you something, compared to what we're normally used to from Williams Brothers, this one smells boozy as hell. You really get the oak coming out of this one. I've not even gone in properly to take a look at the aroma yet, but you really can smell that Speyside oaky character out of this. So yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer's poured a lovely kind of rich amber colour, this one. If you shine the light through it, it's actually, the colour of this one's very akin to like a West Coast IPA, actually. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use is going to play a role. The long, the wort boil time is going to play a role as well. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. So the heather that's gone into this one will have affected the colour a little bit, and the different Speyside barrels will have done something to it as well. To the naked eye, I mean, I am filming this one in the evening, but yeah, this one, if you shine the light through it, it goes like a very kind of bright amber, as I say, quite akin to a West Coast, but if you take it away from putting the light directly through it, it is more of a kind of dark blood orange, like double IPA amber colour, this one. It doesn't have too much of a head to it, which you'd kind of expect, considering what it actually is. The higher ABV you get, the less likely you are to get a head on these things. But yeah, you can see it's got a lovely kind of bubbly ring just around the edge of the glass there, but it looks very, very nice, I have to say. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, and a few little ones just going up toward the surface there. But yeah, that big bubbly ring and a few little wispy bits sitting on top of the beer. But it looks very, very nice, I have to say, but definitely a lot darker than the original Fraoch. That is safe to say, and quite a lot heavier in alcohol as well, nearly 3 times, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, nothing else we need to say about the appearance of this one other than that it's pretty clear. Let's have a wee look at the aroma then and just see how this turns out. Oh yeah, that smells absolutely lovely. It smells really very, very different to anything that I've had from Williams Brothers before. But yeah, the Speyside whiskey in this is just, it's unmistakable actually. Yeah, so the backbone of the beer, I mean, this one gives you everything that you want. You've got the kind of florally characters to it, you've got some nice dried fruits as they were saying, and you've got the barrel. The barrel's quite dominant in this though, but when it's been aged for like, if it's 2011, it's been aged for about 12 years in the barrel. That's to be expected. But yeah, the backbone of this beer then, you've got that lovely smooth European oak. As I've said in many videos before, European oak for me is a lot smoother, it's a lot drier, to be honest with you, than the American oak. And the American oak is going to give you a lot more smoothness and a lot more kind of vanilla to it. But of course, Speyside, if there's any region in Scotland that's going to rival that, it will be the Speyside region. But yeah, you get that lovely smooth. You get a smoother and sweeter character in the wood toward the front of the nose, but a bit of a drier note toward the back of the nose too. And as I say, that's absolutely lovely. On top of that, you can absolutely get some of that lovely kind of whiskey spirit in there. And for me, the whiskey, it smells like one of the sweeter ones. I'd be very curious to know what barrels they've used in this. And of course, you can get a little bit of the sherry within the whiskey as well coming out. You can absolutely smell a little bit of that kind of nice fruitiness that you would get from the sherry. The dried kind of dates and sultanas and stuff like that. So that's all in there. And as I say, the barrel is quite dominant in the aroma of this beer. But yeah, on top of that, you start to get the elements of the beer itself. So there's a little bit of like a kind of sweet brown bready bread crust in there, a little bit of that wholemeal brown bread, but on top of that there's a lot of kind of sweet, like honey, sweet caramel, McVitie's digestive, biscuity notes in there. But these brown sugary notes are very, they're really just kind of spicy because of the heather, which is, it's a very distinctive and very unusual aroma that you get out of this beer. But it certainly, you know, it absolutely works. There's a bit of, you don't get like treacle and molasses and stuff out of this one. It is like a very rich caramel, lighter, you know, the honey is obviously in there. Definitely a little bit like honeycomb and things. McVitie's digestive biscuit, as I said, but it smells hugely, hugely boozy. But at 11% ABV, you know, that's to be expected. And it's just like the bread and the honey and all this, the heather's just kind of infused through it and gives the beer this lovely spiciness, but then the woodiness of the barrel comes through quite clearly. Yeah, in terms of hoppiness and things like that, you know, when this beer's been aged for like 12 years, the overwhelming majority of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one. You do get a tiny little touch of herbal and earthiness coming out of this one, but then you've also got a little bit of a as I say, you've also got a nice little bit of just a little touch of grassiness to this one too, but those are very, very minimal notes, I would add that. So on the yeah, on the fruity, the actual fruity side of things, then I don't think we really need to say very much more about the green component, because it's almost kind of non-existent, to be honest with you. But on the fruity side of things, it is really what you would expect. There's a lot of nice kind of sultanas, you know, dried white green grapes. So yeah, beyond that, there's a little bit of a slightly datey kind of character. Lots of oily pear as well, I would add. And for me, there's just a tiny little hint of a red fruit character. There's just one, very, very minimal. It's just got the beer just has that little bit of sharpness to it. It's like a light fig or a very light blackcurrant or something like that. But yeah, for me, oily pear. Yeah, as I say, a bit of an oily pear, a little bit of a little bit of an oily pear, a little bit of a kind of datey kind of note and sultanas and things. It really is more like dried fruits you're getting, and there's just a very, very slight hint of a red fruity character to this one. There's a wee bit of nuttiness comes out of this beer the more that you smell of it too. But yeah, aroma wise, this is pretty damn special, I have to say. Yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of beers before you get stuck into them. But this is, for Williams Brothers Brewery, very, very different from what you're going to get, mainly because of how barrel forward it is, and it's also one of their highest ABV beers that they've produced as well, so that's worth bearing in mind. I'd be very curious to know if it is actually the heaviest of barrel aged stuff that they've done. So yeah, beautiful aroma. Take some time to enjoy that before you get stuck in. So now I think it's time for us to try this one. So yeah, this one is the Fraoch Barrel Aged edition for 2022, the 30th anniversary edition of the Fraoch Heather Ale, coming in at 11% ABV. Their 30th, one of their two 30th anniversary beers, and my 10th anniversary beer for the channel. So let's get stuck into this one. So we'll say happy anniversary to Williams Brothers Brewery here in Clackmannanshire in Scotland, and happy 10th anniversary to Rampant Lion Reviews, and to all of you guys who've watched the channel, a huge, huge thank you. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's interesting. I'll tell you something, when you take this beer in, it's got a little bit of sharpness to it that's really, I really didn't expect that actually. So when you take this beer in, it has this lovely little bit of just almost sharp tartness to it. So let's see if that stays there. Maybe it's just an impact flavour. No, it still has that. Yeah, when you take this beer in, you just get this sharp, citrusy note that kind of dies away quite quickly to be like datey, peary, sultany, kind of as you would expect. It must just be the kind of booziness or something out of this beer. But I tell you something, it gives you a hell of a little bit of warmth down here in the chest. But again, that is to be expected. Yeah, this is pretty damn nice. It's interesting for me in a sense. This is like nothing else that I've reviewed on the channel, I would say. I like this one, but you really have to let your mouth kind of adjust to this and see what's going on. I think this is one of these beers that's going to mellow out even more as it warms out, but it is very, very, very nice. No doubt in my mind about that. Yeah, it kind of gives you everything you'd expect. In the beginning, it's maybe not quite what you'd expect, but then the aftertaste develops, and it really just shows you everything that you would want from this kind of beer. But let's break it down. We'll describe the flavour a bit more in depth and do as we always do. So, middle third of the palate then to start off with. So, the backbone of this beer, as you would expect, it's that lovely, smooth, European oaky character that's in there. You can feel that it's got a little bit more dryness to it, as I say, than typical bourbon barrels, but you can feel further back on the palate it's definitely drier, and then the further forward you come, the smoother it gets, and the kind of sweeter that note gets out of it too. So, yeah. On the on top of the wood, of course, you start to get some of the spirit coming out of the beer. And for me, again, it's typical Speyside. You know, these lovely Speyside whiskey for me is always, it can be, you've always got this kind of brown sugary smoothness to Speyside whiskey, and you get different ways that the brown sugar comes out. It can be a bit drier, it can be a bit more oily, the whiskey can have a little bit more kind of nuttiness and things, the fruits can be a little bit more red, the fruits can be a little bit more kind of like peary and apricotty and stuff like this. That's the diversity of Speyside. I think Speyside, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I do, that Speyside is where you have the highest density of the highest relative density of distilleries. So there's a whole host of distilleries that this could be. As I say, Aberlour was always a kind of go-to for me, but you've got Glenallachie, Glenfarclas, all of these guys up there doing really, really nice stuff actually. But yeah, as I say, the spirit in this one, it's quite a bright spirit. It's got a good little bit of citrusy and fruity character to it, a mix of kind of oil of the pear and stuff, and a little bit of red fruity character to it as well. Yeah, it goes together really, really quite nicely, this one. It's a very unique beer, this, you have to say that. But yeah, let's move on from the kind of barrel and spirit side of things into the actual beer side of the beer, if we can call it that. So yeah, above the spirit, you get a lovely little bit of like a kind of fresh, brown bready, you get a lovely little bit of a kind of fresh, brown bready bread crust coming out of this one. So yeah, a lovely little bit of fresh kind of brown bready bread crust in there. And on top of that, you get a sweeter kind of wholemeal kind of brown bread sitting on top of that. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit more of as I say, you get a little bit more of a kind of, you get a little touch of a kind of nutty dryness coming out of this one, which is quite interesting. So yeah, there's a wee touch of just nutty dryness in there going further forward, but within the kind of bread you can taste the kind of spiciness from the heather, and it's very unique, and that flavour gets a little bit more intense the further into the aftertaste that you go with this one, and it becomes really, it becomes really quite obvious, and it becomes more spicy and dry the further into the aftertaste that you go. Now, above the bready notes, you start to get the kind of the brown sugars and the booziness coming out of this beer. So yeah, the booziness coming out of this one, that the brown sugars above the kind of wholemealy brown bread, and we're still talking about the middle third of the palate, remember, above that you start to get the kind of oily honey and heathery characters there. So it's almost like you've got honey in the base, and you can feel that, but then just above that you've got a little bit of a very slightly toasty brown sugar, and then in the dead centre of your palate you've got this little circle there which is like a really, really concentrated McVitie's digestive biscuit, and that of course is the kind of epicentre of the alcohol in the beer. So dead centre of your palate is a big boozy biscuits. As you move further out from that you get a little bit more of a kind of toasty brown sugar, and then further out you start to get the kind of honeyish notes coming out of this one. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of your palate with this beer. This is where the kind of epicentre of the flavour is, if you like. So yeah, let's move on to the back third of the palate then. As I've always said, the back third of the palate will give you similar flavours, but generally speaking, from the front of the palate toward the back, the flavours further forward are a bit sweeter, whereas the flavours further back are a little bit drier and more bitter. So back third of the palate then. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in this one, which is really quite nice. So on that bready, in that kind of bready thing that's going on with this one, you can feel that lingers into the aftertaste again. But yeah, the back third of your palate is quite similar. Quite often it is the flavours just come out at different intensities. So you can feel that the woody character is even drier. Then above that, you get a little bit more of the spirit, which is which again feels a little bit drier and more kind of oily in a sense there. But then above that, you've got the bread crust, and then the fluffy kind of wholemeal brown bready character, which has the spice to it. And then above everything else, you can feel a little bit of the dry kind of honey notes creeping over the top, and then you've got the kind of yeasty notes from the beer sitting on top of that back third of your palate. So let's have a wee look at those yeasty kind of qualities coming out of this one. So yeah, for me, the yeasty side of this beer, it's got a little bit of a, as I say, it has a little bit of this kind of, it's like a really spicy, brown, farmhousey type bread. There's a little bit of crackery characters into it, and a little bit of an almost kind of spicy, like cedar wood or something like that. So you can feel this just sitting above the back third of the palate there. So as I say, cedar wood, dense kind of wholemeal brown bread, but absolutely you can feel the flavour on the back third of the palate. You can feel the flavour is taller, and as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Onto the hoppy side of things, and as I said earlier, most of the hoppy character has kind of dropped out of this one because one, it's barrel aged, and two, the beer's about 12 years old or something like that. But yeah, definitely in the back corners of the palate there's a little tiny touch of earthiness there. As you move further forward, a little bit of herbal quality. It smoothens out, and then you get to the front corners of your palate, a little bit of floral aromaticity, and then round the front curve of the tongue there is just a little light touch of grassiness and things coming out of this one, and that as I say, is quite interesting too. But these flavours are very, very minimal. Let's look at the front third of the palate then, and the actual fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you're getting similar to what you do further back. A little bit of a kind of bread crusty note and a bit of a bready build-up in there. And then the base of that, pardon me, the base of that front third of your palate is quite similar. You know, you've got the smooth barrel, a little bit of the spirit, and a wee bit of like brown bread and bread crust. And above that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, interesting stuff on that base. But let's have a wee look at that oily fruity bubble then. So as I say, when you take this beer in, it has this really sharp impact flavour to it. It's like a really tart, citricy. It's almost very much like a kind of sour beer or something like that. In that sense, it's got that little bit of that kind of tart, citricy impact to it. But then when the flavours in this beer mellow out, it's kind of what you would expect actually. At the back of that front third of your palate, you've got these kind of dry sultana type notes, you know, like dried white green grapes, and then you have a little bit of as I say, you have a little bit of a more kind of datey thing going further forward. As you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more of a kind of oily, peary type quality. Yeah, kind of a more oily, peary sort of thing coming out of the beer. And then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's got a little bit of an almost like fresh green apple kind of note, and some of those almost like vinous-y, sharp tart qualities start to kind of push their way out as well. So yeah, that's really, really interesting, that one actually. So yeah, really interesting fruity character. This beer isn't quite as I expected it, to be honest with you. The sharp tartness is kind of the kind of sharp tartness that it has, and the impact is really was not expected. But the rest of it kind of is, to be honest with you. It's not quite. This beer isn't quite as sweet and things as I suspected it was going to be. But you know, it's hell of a boozy, and it's really nice to drink. That's a given, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the flavour of this one. Let's round off then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So, yeah, for me, the mouthfeel, it's not that heavy, to be honest with you. I mean, it's probably top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. The mouthfeel overall is quite clean, a little bit oily, a little bit slick. I think that's absolutely fair to say. In terms of IBUs, I think the beer, you know, you've got a little bit of technical bitterness and perceived bitterness. I was talking with Harry of Blue Nose Beer Reviews about this. This beer, because of the spiciness and the dryness that it has a little bit of perceived bitterness. So maybe about, you know, 25-ish, 30 IBUs, something like that. I think technically speaking, it's probably 0 IBUs. But as I said, this beer has a good little bit of dryness from the wood. And the spirit's giving you a little bit of that as well. And I think the spirit might give you a slight touch of the kind of spiciness and things too, along with the heather. This beer does get a bit drier and a bit more spicy the further into the aftertaste that you go, particularly further back on the palate. But as you examine a bit further forward, it's got a lot more kind of oily sweetness to it, and a bit more of the kind of floral and fruity and almost very slightly vinous, citricy type things coming out of it as well. So the malty character in this one's really nice, and the fruits are very kind of wet and oily as well. So it's, as I say, kind of mid-bodied, quite slick and very slightly oily. I think that's a good way to kind of summarise this one from Williams Brothers. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about this one. This has been a really interesting beer to have a look at for the channel's 10th anniversary review. And like I say, very cool to review a 30th anniversary beer from one of my local breweries for my 10th anniversary video, and especially so when it's a special edition of one of their very famous beers, and also what could well be the oldest beer style, the oldest known beer style in the world, I guess. So yeah, really interesting stuff. I think that is everything we need to say about this one. So yeah, this one is the Fraoch Barrel Aged 2022, or the Fraoch 30th Anniversary Expression 2022, as I've seen it called as well, and 11% Fraoch Heather Ale, aged for about 10 years in Speyside whisky casks from the wonderful Williams Brothers Brewing Company here in Clackmannanshire in central Scotland. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Williams Brothers Brewing Company are as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again very soon. We will have a look at the other 30th anniversary beer that they released, and we will see what these guys produce going forward, because I know Chris Williams is being quite creative with what Williams Brothers Brewing are putting out there. But yeah, again, thank you for all your support over the last 10 years. This has been my 10th anniversary review, and I think this was pretty damn good. So until the next time, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out Williams Brothers social media, and a massive shout out to all my fellow beer tubers out there as well. Slàinte, Skål, and cheers.